All right, Shabbos, say good morning, good morning. Let us begin. So today, Meretz Hashem, we are beginning third parak of Shaar Habitachon. If anyone still needs, there are copies of the Shaar Habitachon here up front. So feel free, we have plenty, Baruch Hashem. So we are beginning in Meretz Hashem, parak Gimel. So the Mechaber continues and he says as follows. He explains, Ach hakdamos asher b'beiburon v'amitasan yishlam la'adam habitachon be'elokim hein chomesh. So remember again, so now what we're focusing on over here is as follows. Literally translated, the hakdamos that a person needs. There are 5 introductory concepts that when a person properly understands them, ultimately they will allow him to have complete trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Remember again, what we were speaking about and what really became clear from the last parak was, we often translate bitachon as belief. But bitachon, of course, doesn't mean belief. Bitachon means a sense of security, a sense of trust. What we outlined in the... before we go back to the previous parak. So therefore, what the Mechaber is introducing us to over here is, there are 5 concepts. 5 concepts. And if you go ahead and you subscribe to those 5 concepts, you will have complete bitachon, a complete sense of security, a complete sense of trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So let's go through the 5. Now, interestingly enough, the first of the 5 is, he says as follows, Achas me'en, shiyamin v'yisbara eslo, his kaptzus hashiva inyonim be'elokim, asher b'his kaptzom b'misha botchen bo, yitochin livtoach alav. This is interesting. The first of the 5 concepts is belief in the 7 criteria, right? So we spent an incredible amount of time in the previous parak going through the 7 criteria that one must meet in order to have bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So now he says the first of the 5 concepts is belief in the 7 criteria. Okay, you following that? The first of the 5 concepts is belief in the 7 criteria that we spoke about in the previous parak. He says, "Ukvar zachartim v'ha'irosiv alehem mashnistem min ha'kasovim." So again, here the Mechaber says, by the way, we've already done the 7 criteria, but it's interesting. What we're going to do now in parak Beis is we're going to review them again. We're going to review them again now. But I want to point out something very interesting. We're going to review them, but first of all, we're going to review them in a different order, and you're going to see why the order is a little bit different now. And it's also going to be like a different formulation of those concepts. So let's take a look. Harishon. So we'll say, so remember again, 5 concepts that you need to go ahead and buy into in order to go ahead and have complete bitachon. The first of the 5 concepts is belief or subscribing to the 7 criteria. So let's go through them. Harishon. What's the first of the criteria? Shabori yisparach mirachim al ha'adam yosem mikol mirachim. First criteria is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I will say, remember again, we're not going to go through the entire exercise again, because what we already established, there are 7 criteria in order to have bitachon in someone. In other words, someone has to meet 7 criteria in order to be worthy of your bitachon. What did we establish in last para? What did we establish? No human being could meet those 7 criteria. Therefore, again, by definition, the only entity in this world which meets the 7 criteria is the Ribono Shel Olam. That's it. So now that we've established that, now we're changing the phrasing a little bit. See, in Parak Aleph, what was a little bit confusing about Parak Beis, a little bit confusing was the wording. In other words, we're talking about if someone meets these 7 criteria, then they're worthy of your bitachon. And we were always talking about it as someone or something, because we were still entertaining the possibility that maybe a human being meets these criteria. Now, at the end of the parak Beis, what have we established? No mortal, no human being meets the 7 criteria for bitachon. Now that I know that, our conversation is about the Ribono Shel Olam. So here we go. So what's the first of 7 criteria? Shabori yisbarach mirachim ala adam yosem mikol mirachim. There is nothing or no one more compassionate more than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Ribono Shel Olam is the ultimate source of rachamim. V'chol rachamim b'chem l'shem yizulasu alav kulam heim mirachamei akel b'chem laso kimo shomer HaKosov v'nosam v'chol rachamim b'richamcho v'herbecha. This is incredible. There is no greater source. The Kadosh Baruch Hu has more compassion on man than any other being, than any other person. And he says something even more. Any compassion that man has, where does it come from? It comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is an incredible idea. That in other words, any compassion that I do possess, ultimately again doesn't come from me. It doesn't stem from me, but rather at the end of the day, it comes from the Ribono Shel Olam himself. As the pasuk says, "V'nasan lecha rachamim," Hashem will give you compassion, v'richamcha, and you will be compassionate. So that both say criteria number one. So remember, I have to believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the greatest source of rachmanos, of rachamim. That I will say now, why is this incredibly important? Why is this important? Because I will say that belief is what allows us to weather the difficult times in life, right? When do we have the greatest theological or hashkafic crisis moments? When something bad happens in life. I don't understand how a good God does bad things. It's the age-old theological question. So therefore, what the Mechaber is saying is, and that's why I understand why he switches up the order a little bit, the first criteria that you have to subscribe to is that there is no greater source of Rachmanos in this universe than the Ribono Shel Olam. And any other Rachmanos that you will find in human beings stems from the Ribono Shel Olam. That's number one. He goes on, he says, Vasheni, number two, Kehabari Yisala, Lo Ya'al Mimenu of Ofnei To'ala Sa'adam. Second criteria that you have to believe in. Second, the truth is, it's interesting that some are translating this ultimately not as much as criteria, but as quality. It's quality. Okay, the second criteria or quality that HaKadosh Baruch Hu possesses, Kehabari Yisala Lo Ya'al Mimenu Ofnei To'ala Sa'adam. Ultimately, again, the ways that benefit the person are not hidden from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does this mean? That the Ribono Shel Olam ultimately, again, knows what is good for us. He knows what is good for us. In other words, He knows everything that is going to be of benefit for me. V'adin no seinzeh, mepnei shu echad mima'asov, ve'ein mi sheyodeh ba'afnei takonos ha'asoi v'afsedu p'gam ha'masigim oso, o ba'anfei machaloso v'aruchaso, yosem yosef. They both say, this is incredible. Only the Ribono Shel Olam knows what is best for me. Only He knows what's best for me. Again, literally translated, a person has to believe that the ways that benefit the person are not hidden from Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows exactly what's good for me. Now I will say, it's incredible how he describes this. He says, why is this? Why is this? He says, because there is no one who knows a thing better than the person who made it. You hear that? There's no one who knows an object or an entity better than its creator. Achashorish v'atzura ha'atzmis ein lohem b'hem shum tachbula v'lo yecholes l'chadshem v'ashachidei shorish ha'adam l'tzuraso t'vunaso v'sidu chiburo hu ha'chacham ha'yodeh b'nyane to'alasav v'nuzakav. I'm just going to read this quickly. V'atov lo ba'olamo v'achriso b'lo safek. So we'll say, so again, he says this is true with human beings, right? If you go ahead and you make an object, you have a human artisan, right? Whatever it is you're making, it could be something physical, it could be something intellectual. You create something. No one knows that thing better than you. Even though very often all that you're doing is you're creating an external physical shell. But because you made it, you understand it better than anyone else. So he says, Allah, if that's true with the human creator, Allah has kama v'kama, it's true with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No one knows us better than the Ribono Shel Olam. And therefore I will say again, remember, in this second criteria, or this second quality, no one knows what's better for me more than HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You'll say to yourself, why is that? It's simple. He made me. So because He made me, He knows me better than anyone else. I will say, by the way, if you think about this, this is why, in a healthy case at least, right? So after HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who usually knows you best, or at least as a child, who usually knows you best? Your parents. It's the same idea. Why? They made you. Right? There's something about that when you are involved in the creative process of something, you understand it better than anyone else. Again, it doesn't always happen that way because parents don't necessarily always know their kids. And certainly as we get older, it's not necessarily true, but certainly again in those initial moments of creation, it's absolutely true. So if it's true by parents, and it's true by human creators, then al-achas kama v'kama, it's true with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki Moshe Kasov, Ani Hashem Elokecha, v'lamdecha lahoyel, madrichecha b'derech telech, v'amar, ki es asher yahav Hashem yochiach, u'ka'av es ben yirtzeh. Good. So we'll say that's criteria number 2. Let's get in one more. Or 3 more. Hashlishi. They'll say, what's the third criteria? We're just behind. Right? What's the third criteria? Right? Or the third quality that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. Let's say, just understand what we're doing over here. In order to have bitachon in Hashem, a person has to believe that the Ribono Shel Olam possesses these qualities. Right? If I don't believe Hashem possesses these qualities, I'm not going to trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm not going to have a sense of security from the Ribono Shel Olam. So what's number 3, quality number 3, Vashlishi. Ki abori yisbarach chazak mikol chazak. There is nothing stronger in this world than Hashem. Udvaro nigzar mikol davar. And ultimately, again, His word is absolute over anything else. Ve'ein meshiv dino. And there is nothing or no one who can overrule His decisions. So I will say it's really kind of 3, it's all the same, but it's 3 different examples. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is chazak mikol chazak. Nothing is stronger than Him. Dvaro nigzar mikol davar. His words are more absolute than any other words. Ve'ein meshiv dino. And nothing overturns His decisions. Kimosha Amar, Kava Sher Chafetz Hashem Asa, Va'amar Ken Yed Dvari Asher Yetzi Mipi, Lo Yoshuv Elai Reikam, Ki im asa is asher chafetz. So remember again, he already said this in the second chapter, which is this idea that the psukim are being really brought down just to highlight and to reinforce the ideas. Okay, nothing necessarily new in the psukim, so that's why we'll kind of do the psukim a little bit faster. Also, we'll do one more, then we'll stop for today. Haravi. Oh, thank you. Haravi. What's the fourth criteria or the fourth quality? Ki hu mashkiach al hanhages in yonei ha'adam kulam lo yanichim v'lo yis'alim mehem. So we'll say, quality number 4, criteria number 4 is HaKadosh Baruch Hu oversees everything that man is doing. He's the mashkiach. He oversees everything. Lo yanichem v'lo yis'alei mehem. Number 1, He does not go ahead and leave us alone. Right? He does not hide Himself from what is going on in our lives. V'lo yisaser mimenu davar mehem miktana va'ad gidolam. And nothing is hidden from Hashem, from the smallest detail to the biggest thing. V'lo yashkicheu davar es davar. And ultimately, Rose says that's very interesting. One thing doesn't cause Him to forget about something else. Rose, what does that mean? The Ribono Shel Olam doesn't get distracted. So criteria or quality number 4 is the Ribono Shel Olam is hyper-focused on what's going on in our lives. Mashkiach al hanhagas in yonei adam. He's always involved in what's going on in my life. He never goes ahead and forsakes. He doesn't put me on the side or hide Himself from me. He doesn't go ahead and ignore certain small details, and He doesn't get distracted. Kimosha Amar Akosov, Lama Somer Yaakov, Usisabri Yisrael, Nistra Dar Kimi Hashem, Melkem Shetiyav. All right, so we'll stop over for today. So now we've gotten up to the fifth criteria, to the 5th quality. So remember again, just to be clear, we're going to stop here, but just to understand, in Parag Gimel, what the Mechaber introduced us to is, there are 5 principles that you have to believe in. You have 5 principles that are necessary in order to have bitachon. The first of the 5 principles is, you have to subscribe to the 7 criteria or qualities which make HaKadosh Baruch Hu unique. So all we're doing now is once again reviewing those 7 qualities which were already spoken about, already taught to us in Perek Beis. We're reinforcing them here, reformulating here, and reordering them over here. We're talking about the reordering in Meretz Hashem on Sunday. Let's say Shkoyach.